is up, guys? Welcome to Truth and Transparency. Jumping right into it. Make yourself at home. Take off your shoes and relax your feet. Do me a favor. At some point, you're going to have an opinion about the video. Thumbs it up, thumbs it down. Make yourself known. Brent Kopacka, was he swatted? Who called 911? Here it is. Right there, you can see is a picture of the red car that pulls up on the body cam. That red car does not belong to some Olsen dude. Okay, that's not who that is. The red car, in fact, belongs to the guy that was driving it that night. I'll show you his picture, and that is Torino Deguzman. Now, at 20:38 hours, so 8:38, a 911 call was placed, and the original reporting party was Charice Deguzman, who is the wife of Torino Deguzman. A little bit of background here is the Guzmans are a military family, and they both work at WSU. Charice went to WSU for criminal justice and psychology. Then she bounced around to the different colleges to get different degrees, heavy with criminology, heavy with psychology. She was with DSHS, Department, Services, Health, all that crap. U.S. Army from 1997 to 2003. She was also a volunteer with the U.S. Army, 2005, 2006. She was with Toledo Molding and Dye in 2006, 2007. She was Georgia Bio, something to do with biomass, 2010 to 2011. Back with DSHS, 2012 to 2014. Then she gets into the school districts, where she is an attendance secretary at Renton School District. She was also a secretary. She was an executive director for a nonprofit, MackStrong Team Works, out of Newcastle, Washington. This is all going to be relevant here in a second. And on the 911 call, she says that the reporting party, who's the original reporting party, which is Charice, her husband with pastor, and then they put a phone number in there. And this phone number goes and links to a Daniel Rice, 48 years old, again, U.S. Army helicopter mechanic and chef crew. He is the head for the crew. He is the chef. Knives. Torino mechanic, same thing with the helicopters, CH-47, United States Army. So that is who calls 911 on this incident where they say that a churchgoer who is, well, first of all, one of these people is claiming to be a pastor. Next is the churchgoer, the male that's in the bedroom, is Jordan Baker. Well, Jordan Baker then comes out and he talks with Heidi Lamley. And Heidi Lamley talks to him not once, but 3 times. The third time being she goes to his hotel room because they bought him a hotel room. The police department bought him a hotel room. The police department put Christian Yenna in a hotel room, a different place, and they put up Jordan Baker. Now, Jordan Baker they spoke with on the property. Now, you guys remember that when the red car came up, then it parked in a parking spot. Then Jordan got in the back seat and they rolled down the window, right? And Heidi says, "Tell me everything you know about Brent." Now, this is where it gets interesting, is that he says, "I've only known him for like 2 or 3 months. I don't know that much about him." But guess who did? Guess who I believe did? The driver of that vehicle, who was Deguzman, I always said, why aren't we trying to get a connection here on why and how does Jordan Baker know Brent Kopacka? How do they become roommates? Okay. Well, let's take a look here. May 9th, 2022, Washington State University Veterans Center. You guys see that? Torino. Now, how did I find Torino? How did this all happen, Lana? Well, it's a good thing you guys asked. When they were writing out their report, I don't know how this happened, but they referred to the guy that Jordan Baker was playing video games with when Brent is supposedly threatening and all this crap. And Heidi writes down the name Brian Torino, Brian, and then Torino. And I'm like, there is not a Brian Torino. Like, there is one person. And then I said, wait, I'm giving them way too much credit to get this right. So if he's talking all fast and he says, well, I was playing video games, I was playing with so-and-so and so-and-so. Okay. And then this person who wrote it down is putting it as the same person. I said, okay, let's just go with the name Torino WSU. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, I love it. Let me tell you something, Jay. If I'm a nothing burger, then I don't even know what you are, buddy, because the day I'm here, the day I'm you, coming somewhere. So I just had to point it out, baby. Woo! Love it. You guys, I love that shit. That's why I highlight that shit. So come across, oh, wait, how did I work this all? The number that they put in, this reporting party husband, and then so I have this name, Charice, right? Well, I look up Charice. Who's Charice married to? Torino. I was like, fucking A. Boom. I don't know who Brian Torino is, but Pullman, Washington, either you purposely put that in your report like that to throw everything off and not use the name Torino Deguzman. Okay. Remember it was a big old hush hush with who called 911? Can we get the 911 call? Can we hear what they said on the 911 call? That 911 call is very, very, very important in this for the situation. So I linked Torino Deguzman is the husband of Charice, the reporting party, and the 911 call. But they're like 54 years old. What is Jordan Baker playing video games against and with a 54-year-old? He's 25, right? Well, come to find out, Torino Deguzman has a 25-year-old son. Okay. Next. So I want you guys to listen to this. After he posts this on his social media public page that he's working at Washington State University Veterans Center. What is Brent in? Okay. When you need help and you're bouncing around and trying to get your shit together, this is exactly where you would go. Okay. So the guy that called 911, his wife, she's also with WSU and in this type of role. And we'll get to her in a minute. So they work for WSU. They're in this capacity. He posts this on May 9th, 2022. Then he says, hey, there's the car back there. That's the red car they roll up in. Then on May 23rd, 2022, now everybody wants to focus on Brian Kohlberger's May survey. Okay. And it's just like fucking wow. All right. Brian Kohlberger's May survey is wow. Right. Here we go. May 23rd, 2022, Torino Deguzman says, hey, Facebook family, I have a student at Washington State University that is doing a survey on veterans who own homes. If you could please take a few minutes to help these students out, that would be much appreciated. This is not a hack. I am just trying to help some students out at the university I work at in the Veterans Center. Now, remember I said, how did Jordan Baker get teamed up with Brent? Okay. Heidi, on the night of the incident here, I talked with Officer Weingartner, who told me he got a very brief statement from Baker, who told him Brent was acting crazy, talking nonsense, and all sorts of crazy stuff all day. What concerned Baker was Brent said something to the effect of, I'm going to start shooting you and my roommate in like 5 minutes, and was walking around with a gun. Baker called and snuck out. Baker assumed Yenna was hiding in his room, and Officer Weingartner did not know if Yenna heard anything. Officer Reuben Harris says that Baker, when his roommate Brent Kopacka was doing this, that Baker ran and sprinted out of that place. That's in his report. Okay. Well, that's not accurate, or rather it's inconsistent. So I saw Yenna walking next to 1000 South Latah Street, and I asked, hey, can I talk to you? Yenna said the person we were talking about was named Brent, and he was in the Army, and said that he had PTSD. Yenna believed he was 35 and did not know where he was from. I asked what happened today, and Yenna told me Brent had one of his episodes where he goes ranting and throwing stuff. I asked if he said he was going to shoot anybody, and Yenna told me he did say he was going to shoot somebody. Yenna said Brent started cussing a couple of times and said something about letting his brother go. Yenna added fighting his brother. Yenna clarified that Brent made it sound like someone was holding his brother against his will. I asked Yenna if he thought Brent could be possibly, could shoot him, or what did he think about that? Yenna told me he did not believe that he was talking about him. Yenna said Brent had a pistol on the counter this morning. I asked Yenna about, or what was he doing in his room, before we took him out of there. Yenna said, he told me that he was watching NCIS. He wasn't hiding. He was watching NCIS. I asked Yenna if he was concerned about his safety at all, and he stated, no. I asked Yenna if he would find it at all shocking or surprising if one of his other roommates thought Brent would hurt or shoot someone. Yenna told him no, he wouldn't. Yenna told me his roommates were Brent and Baker. I advised Sergeant Harris over the radio that Brent was in the military and had PTSD. What comes out in the report? They're saying that Harris did not know about Brent having anything to do with the military or PTSD or anything like that until after. That's a goddamn lie, and it's also in the radio at 9:21 p.m. I returned to Pullman Police Department and located Brent Kopacka, listed at living at that address. I called Baker. Now, this is Baker now. I requested Baker tell me what happened today. Baker told me he was taking a brief nap. He was taking a brief nap at the house, at the apartment. Baker said he was awoken by screaming, yelling, throwing stuff, pots and pans in the sink by my roommate, Brent. Baker said in the last 2 hours before he was picked up by his friend, Brian Torino. That's when I was like, Brian Torino, let me find out what I can find out. Who's Brian Torino? Well, they got that all wrong. Okay. Brent was making death threats towards he and his roommates when they were not in the room. Baker said he was threatened, quote unquote, he was threatening to shoot multiple times. Quote unquote, he was threatening to do harm to his neighbors. And Brent was talking crazy. Baker said it was almost like Brent was talking to someone else who wasn't even there. Baker said it was almost like a psychosis. I asked Baker what he specifically heard Brent say when he was threatening him. And he just says, if you don't move out of this apartment in 5 minutes, I'm going to shoot you. Brent also said, you have 5 minutes or I'm going to shoot you. I asked Baker if he took that serious. He said, yeah, I mean, possibly. Baker explained he was also wondering if Brent was hallucinating or if he was talking crazy. I asked Baker if he believed Brent had the ability to shoot and kill him. Baker told me, yeah, I believe so. Baker estimated Brent said this around 8:30/8:40. Now, we know that can't be accurate, okay, because what he then says is that Baker estimated his friends got the police involved about 10 minutes after Brent said that. Well, the police phone call was at 8:38. So that means that Brent would have had to say this 10 minutes before that. Baker told me he had a rifle. Now, we all saw the body cam. This Deguzman guy's in the driver's seat. We don't know who's in the passenger seat, okay? But then there was another number given on the 911 call, and that went back to this Daniel Rice guy. And this Daniel Rice guy is the guy that was, again, a military guy with that same helicopter, CH-47, all the same crap that he has. Deguzman has, except this guy is a chef. Now, so when Heidi says, hey, tell me everything you know about Brent really quick, as fast as you can, I want to know why Deguzman did not speak up, because I believe Deguzman is how Baker even knows who Brent is. Next. And they just sat there. And then Heidi told them, okay, leave and go to the Pullman Police Department and go sit in the lobby. Okay. What do? They don't do that. They go to Dairy Queen. Guzman, he's a military guy. Like, we're talking like served in. Oh, wait till you see. This is like a serious thing. You see guys there with SWAT gear on. The police officer tells you to take Christian and his dog. You don't. They say to go to the Pullman Police Department and sit in the lobby. Where do they go? To Dairy Queen, allegedly. Now, so this is Heidi. I briefly looked at Brent's involvement in Spillman and found he had been the subject of several calls where abnormal behavior was observed. I advised Sergeant Engel Brent had significant abnormal behavior history. Again, so another thing that would have been known at 9:30. Okay. I called Baker back and asked Baker why he left the apartment that day, like when he left. And he told me he did not feel safe with Brent in the apartment making threats. I also learned Baker had lived with Brent for 2 months, only 2 months. I contacted Officer Weingardner again by phone and learned he knew Brent was in the apartment because Sergeant Harris observed a male in the apartment we believe to be Brent as he entered the apartment. She was right behind those two. She didn't see a man. She's learning when she calls him, because she's now at Pullman, because she went back to get the ballistics. She calls Weingardner to say, hey, I contacted Officer Weingardner by phone and learned she then learned that they knew Brent was in the apartment, because she was trying to get to the bottom of all of this, like, because she went into the apartment. She didn't see anybody. She knew that the door C that they're claiming was closed. It was open. The door B was closed. A was closed. They didn't even check the one on the right-hand side, which is crazy. Then Christian comes out of the one, but the other one was open. Okay. And no, she knows that she didn't see anybody. And so that's for the first time that she's being told, oh, we know that he's in there because Reuben Harris saw him. I was hearing radio traffic on Pullman primary radio channel, blah, blah. Now, Lamley is the one that worked on this probable cause affidavit to get a search warrant to just be able to go in there. Okay. And so by the time she starts writing it, and she calls two different judges, and she gets it basically approved and okay at 11:08 and then 11:20 or 11:37 p.m. Okay. Now, I attempted to reach Baker, meaning Heidi. He didn't answer the phone. Okay. And text for a third time to complete the LAP card and provide him with information to ATVP. I borrowed Sergeant Harris's Blue Bridge credit card and paid for a room for Yenna to stay in and at the Holiday Inn Express. This is going to be wild, you guys. Please. This is going to be so wild. So I'm able to check it off because I wanted to know who made the phone calls to use the police credit card to be able to have these rooms. Well, Heidi did the one, and she did it for Christian Yenna. Okay. Nowhere in any report that I've read so far, and I've gone through a shit ton. Okay. Nowhere in any report is anybody admitting who purchased the room with the blue card for Jordan Baker. Okay. So again, I borrowed Sergeant Harris's Blue Bridge credit card and paid for a room for Yenna to stay at the Holiday Inn Express. Jordan stays, by the way, he's going to be staying at the Krugerland, the Quality Inn. I heard officers on Pullman Primary talking about shots being fired from the apartment. Okay. So if this comes right after that she purchased the hotel room for Yenna, okay, the shots being supposedly fired and coming over the radio, if you believe the reports of the police officers versus the witnesses, then that's at 2:15 a.m. Sergeant Gordon advised Brent was showing them a gun, brandishing his hand, which led me to believe Brent was intending to get officers to shoot him, is what she says. But she wasn't there. On 12/15/2022 at 2:50 hours, which is almost 3 o'clock, I received a call from Baker, who explained that he had fallen asleep. He had fallen asleep after the incident and was now able to talk with me. So he was supposed to go to Pullman and sit in the lobby. Okay. She tried to call him and attempted to text him for a third time to complete his, and didn't get through. Then he calls her at 2:50 a.m. And I wondered to myself, I was like, that was a really interesting time. 2:50. Well, so then she said, oh, okay. So she responded to the Quality Inn. And this is when I said, okay, wait a second. Who got Jordan Baker a room with the Blue Bridge credit card? Because Lamley handled Yenna's. Who got this dude his? Because I have the receipts, and it shows that the cops paid for both of those kids to have a hotel room that night at 2 different locations. But there is nobody that's writing that they were the one that did it for Jordan Baker. So she responds to the Quality Inn to collect a more in-depth statement of what occurred, as well as to complete certain requirements due to this technically being a domestic violence crime. I arrived at Quality Inn to speak with Baker at 3:15 a.m. There was some delay because I returned to the station because when this call, so Baker called her at 2:50 a.m. She was on premises. So I believe that somebody told, I believe that somebody instructed Jordan Baker to call at the time that he did. Okay. And it got Heidi away from the scene again. So then, because Heidi then leaves and she's smart. She's like, okay, I'm going to go and stop at the police department, get a new battery for my body cam. Okay. And then I'm going to go to the Quality Inn. So that's exactly what she does. And she states why she was a little bit behind. So she arrives at 3:15. She said, I had to return to the station to get a working battery for my Axon body camera. Baker explained the following to me. Baker was not a mental health professional, but believed his roommate has some form of schizophrenia. Brent did not only have PTSD, this guy has known Brent for 2 months, he told her. But he also had some red flags with schizophrenic about him. Baker had mental illness himself and took medication, but Brent did not. Baker had seen it all from schizophrenics doing really well to being really bad. Brent hears things that aren't there and will talk to himself. Will see things that are not real and is very paranoid about the government. Brent has been acting rambunctious the last 2 months. Now, this is where I say, well, he's only known Brent for 2 months. So how can he say he's been acting rambunctious for the last 2 months? That would be the only thing that's only how you would ever know the guy then. Hey, ever since I've known him just the past 2 months, he's been really rambunctious. Okay. But to word it like this and to say, oh, for the last 2 months, this is how he's been acting, that would tell you that you know Brent for longer than 2 months. Last night was the quote unquote tip of the iceberg, she puts in quotes, when Brent was making threats. And she said, last night was the tip of the iceberg. Now, if you're getting an interview at 3:00 in the morning, all right, last night. So, okay, he's referring to 8:30 as last night, you know. So last night was the quote unquote tip of the iceberg when Brent was making threats. Brent was standing outside his room and said, if you don't come out in 5 minutes, I will shoot both of you. Baker did not know if Brent was listening to voices in his head. Brent has admitted to hearing voices in the past. When Brent said that Baker had to get people involved because he did not know if Brent was going to harm one of them. When Brent said that Baker had to get people involved because he did not know if Brent was going to harm one of them, Brent does have a rifle and knives, and I lost it. Brent has rifles, and knives. So it's kind of like a Jen McCabe moment there for me when, and he has knives. Okay. Brent was very angry for some reason, and Baker didn't know if Brent was going to act out his rage. Baker said Baker, could not be in that environment. Baker explained he had 9 months left on his lease, but he could not stay in an environment that was not livable. Ready for this? I go and I get one of the first responding, actually SWAT guys that came from home. He did a really good job with his report, and he said there was nothing in the apartment. In the living room, there was no furnishing. It was not furnished. It was not furnished. Writes it in his report. So anybody out there that's saying, oh, you can't tell because you can't see this, it's boom in it's in the report, flat out. So I was wondering when somebody's going to mention it. So he has 9 more months left on his lease. You've been living there and you don't have anything in your common area. No TV to game on, no TV to watch on, no, nothing. There was nothing in that room. Okay. And ready for this? Not a single person out of all the reports that I've read, not a single person went through and said, this is what was in these rooms. You know, when I walked into this, there was this, there was this, there was this. Not one person. Wait till you see when I do that live to show you all the ends of all the reports and how everybody mysteriously had something happen where their body cam never went into the room. So Baker said he could not live in that environment. Baker explained that he had 9 months left to live in his lease, and he could not stay in that livable. Baker said he could not live with someone who was not taking their medication that was potentially a danger to themselves and others. Now, Brent Kopacka has had that address for way longer. All right. So now comes in here, Torino Deguzman. All right. And if he knows where Brent lives and he's trying to pair people up or have people living with people, and I'm looking at the angle of what's this type of money angle that, how does it work there? Do you have roommates that you're just stuffing people in an apartment like that, and the doors don't have individual locks with like keys and shit? Like that'd be like a dorm, you know what I mean, versus like an actual apartment. And so every time that I've called, they only rent out the place as like that's your unit. So I'm trying to get clarification on that, seeing if it's changed. Again, goes back to this whole buying houses, living with people. Baker told me he locked. Okay, so this is where it clashes with what Harris says. Baker had never seen Brent so angry and talking so crazy like that. Baker did not know if it was his drinking. I asked if Brent was drinking last night, and Baker told me he did not know. I asked if Brent did any other drugs. Baker said Brent did not know. No, not that I knew of. Baker said Brent's behavior was very obscene. Baker told me he locked himself in his room when Brent came home and started smashing things around and started yelling and cussing. Not anything was reported as being smashed or anything, and there's nothing to come home and smash. There's nothing in the apartment. Everything was out, there's nothing in there. So him coming home, he says, when Baker said he told me that he locked himself in his room when Brent came home and started smashing things around and started yelling and cussing. Baker said he considered calling police when Brent started making threats in the open. Making threats in the open. Baker estimated Brent was making threats for about 10 minutes, and he did not know who they were directed to. Baker said Brent was threatening to aim his rifle at Baker and Yenna and shoot them. Baker explained Brent was talking about having his rifle and was saying he was going to blast the door open or come in and start shooting. Oh, for the record, there was no rifle found. It was a pistol, and it was in the middle of the room. And Brent Kopacka's body was up against in the back of the room, up against in the corner of the west and south, like in the corner. And his gun was this gun, whatever gun it was, this pistol was in the middle of the room. So if you have a gun on you and you're racking it right before you get shot, how do you end up way over in the corner of the room, up in the corner, and your gun is in the middle by nothing? Baker explained that Brent was talking about having his rifle and was saying he was going to blast the door open or come in and start shooting. Baker told me Baker was locked in his room. Baker estimated Brent made threats to blast the door 5 or 6 times in 10 minutes. Now, Reuben Harris said that when Baker was in the main area, like the open area, living room area, when Brent made a threat, that Baker ran out of there so fast. That's what's in Harris's report. Okay. This is why I like the work that Heidi did. Okay. So I'm going to blast you, blah, blah. Okay. I asked Baker how he knew it was directed at him. Baker said it sounded like Brent was by his door. Listen to how all over the place this is. Ready? So Baker said at least a few times he's been saying this. Baker said Brent redirected the threat to Yenna a few more times, and estimated it was 6 times in 10 minutes that he was saying he was going to blast the door and do all this. Then Heidi said, well, Baker, if you're in your room, right? I asked Baker how he knew it was directed at him. Baker said, it sounded like Brent was by his door when Brent was talking. So they're bye-bye Harris and your little, that Baker just ran out of there. No, Baker's saying that he went to his room and he locked the door. He didn't just run out. Baker said he did not know if Brent was talking to him or something that wasn't there. Baker told me it sounded like Brent was talking to him and explained he could see Brent's shadow under his door. Now, remember when they went into the place? The light was off. They turned the light on. Baker told me it sounded like Brent was talking to him and explained, I could see Brent's shadow under my door. Okay. Baker told me left the apartment as quietly as he could. Heidi's like, I asked what made Baker leave the apartment quietly. Baker said he didn't want to be loud because one loud noise could be his life. Baker told me he had never seen Brent so angry. Baker told me he did not feel safe because of the way Brent was acting and the things he was saying. Baker told me he knew Brent had a rifle because Brent showed it to him one day. Do you understand that right there? Well, how do you know him to have a rifle? Did you see the rifle? Well, no, he showed me it one day, though. So you didn't see Brent with a rifle. Baker estimated he last saw the rifle 4 or 5 days ago. Baker told me he was waiting to not see Brent's shadow and was going to run for his life if Brent was out in the open. Baker told me he was not trying to get Brent in any trouble, but he could not live in an environment like that. Baker told me Brent needed professional help. Baker described Brent had extreme mood swings. Baker thought that he might have been part of Brent's delusion. Baker told me he believed there were things Yenna did not understand about mental illness, so he's probably brushing it off as if nothing's happening. Baker told me he thought Brent was a danger to him and thought Brent was mad enough to kill him. Heidi said, I completed this assessment card with Baker. I provided Baker with a statement form and information for ATVB or VP. And I explained to Baker I had applied for a search warrant for the residence and Brent was shooting. I asked that Baker not return to the apartment without contacting the police department first. I explained we would be trying to arrest Brent for harassment. I asked Baker, so he doesn't ask, like, Baker never says, what's going on? What happened? She has to tell him all of this. He's not even asking about how Brent is. I asked Baker to apply for a protection order. Guess what Baker does? This is at 3:15 to like 3:45 in the morning. This takes. Baker then calls the police at 6:30 in the morning wanting to get into his apartment. Do you think the kid slept at all? What do you think he was up to? That he can just get into his apartment at 6:30. Doesn't even ask, like what? So I'm going to back up because during this time, do you guys remember Darren Duncan that was came around? You guys remember Darren Duncan? Well, Darren Duncan was called that night. Darren Duncan was called that night. And one of the things I thought it was interesting is, don't you think that you would ask, like, hey, how do you even know who Brent is? How did you become his roommate? Like, did you not, like, how does that not come out at some point? Darren Duncan was called that night because and he was called early on. That's how they knew about his. So I'm gonna grab this. So I got clarification when I made a couple phone calls, and all the negotiating phone calls went unanswered. By the way, when it's saying like call in, that was explained that that was us calling. Yeah, he never answered. So, did you guys know that every time they used a pull camera in this scenario, they would take off one of their body cameras, connected this pull camera, and every time that they did that, the body cam, they would be able to use their phone to like look at, what the camera's seeing, but it never recorded it. So they were taking off their body cams to do and use with this pull camera at times, thinking, we're all okay. Well, we're going to be able to see that. No, it doesn't record. It's just so that you can see it. So when officers were taking off, when they were doing the tactical stuff, and they were, they flew the drones in there and they were smashing them and they couldn't fly them at all. When they were using the pull camera, every time that they ever used that in the body camera that was put on there to do it, it never recorded anything. You could only just see it. So one of the officers here, Detective Bray, I could see through a hole, but could not see a person or firearm from my vantage point. Officer McNanny used a pull camera to locate a person in the deep corner of room C. Deep corner of room C. Officer Tanego, Sergeant Gordon, and I made entry and saw a firearm in the middle of the room, out of reach of a body in the back corner. I responded to the area of Kopacka and could see a bullet wound in the area of his left temporal area. I could see a lot of blood. That's how I found out about deep corner, gun in the middle. Now, the person that interviewed and called up Darren, which was really important, was first here. Alex Gordon was one of the SWAT members who was called from home. So at approximately 9:05 hours, I was called from my home for a Whitman County Regional SWAT operation. And I'm going to fast forward to this here where it says, during, we planned for breaching the door by pushing it open and placing a wedge or a chair in the door to keep it open. At approximately 12:13 a.m., we approached and breached. We pushed open the door, placing a chair in it to hold it open. The door had a silver or gold 311 affixated to the red colored door. During the breach, I could see the living room area that appeared vacant of furniture with an open concept. I could see a kitchen on the west side of the main room. I could see an open bedroom and hallway area on the north side of the living room. I did not see any person. I could see a cell phone and gray sweatshirt was lying near the front entry. Harris said that Brent had a sweatshirt on. The gray one. Now, bedroom C is where they said that this is the same Alex guy. Bedroom C is where they're saying that Brent was. And here we find out for the first time that bedroom C was locked. I kicked at the door, making a hole near the handle. I kicked it all the way through so Officer McNanny could insert the pull camera. Officer Andre rammed the door. It appeared to be slightly held up with items on the floor. The pull camera was inserted again. Officer Tenego reported he was able to see a gun on the floor and the suspect on the ground as he entered the bedroom. And I said, this little shit. I said, now this is called police lingo, okay? This wording. Officer Tenego reported he was able to see a gun on the floor. So he leaves it so vague and basic like that because he doesn't want to be the person that's saying that he was way deep in the corner, okay, like the other person. So he says, this is hearsay. Officer Tenego was able to report that he saw a gun on the floor and the suspect on the ground. If anybody was to read that report, they would think that the suspect and the gun were right next to each other. Okay? As he entered the bedroom, Officer Bray and I followed. The room was cleared and a deceased male was on the west side of the room. So none of what he said is a lie, but it's also, I mean, I would say it's not accurate. You know, it's not, what do you want to say? It's so vague. Now, I exited the bedroom and ensured a secondary search for persons was conducted with no persons found. I instructed unassigned SWAT officers to only take what they had brought with them out of the residence and return to 305. I was advised to cancel the EMS response. I returned to room 305 and turned off my body camera. And I was like, oh, that camera's probably needed. Well, then he says, I never went into the room that Brent was in. Okay. This is now Officer McNanny says, I removed my body-worn camera from my helmet mount and utilized it on the end of a long pole to get a view into apartment number 311. I kept my body-worn camera on the pole to utilize as a pole camera until about 12:44 a.m. when I placed it back onto my helmet. The camera provided a live video feed to my phone, but was not recording during that time. Fucking believable. Again, I prepared my body-worn camera on the pole again in order to assist in safely clearing the apartment number 311. Through a hole in the door of Kopacka's room, I was able to get the pole camera inside. Officer Andre assisted and determined that Kopacka was down to the left side of the room when entering through the door. I removed the pole camera and other SWAT officers were able to clear the room. I assisted in a secondary search of apartment 311, except for Kopacka's room. I removed my pole camera equipment from apartment 311 and gathered the rest of my equipment. I never went in there. Now, Nuxall was called, and she's one of the females, and she's the one that calls Baker, talks to him, finds out that he's at Dairy Queen. Then she's like, I gotta go. She was pulled away from something, okay? Well, Baker said they lived with Kopacka for 3 months and did not know any background information on Kopacka, didn't know his last name. Baker told me he believed Kopacka had schizophrenia because he always was hallucinating. And about people were always spying on him. I was interrupted and had to call Baker back later, and she never says why she was interrupted. Baker said Kopacka often had slurred, incoherent speech. Baker later said he had severe mood swings and was very angry often. Baker did not know Kopacka's last name when I asked. Baker was able to provide a phone number for him and told me he had a rifle but did not know what type. Now, they had 3 phone numbers for Brent, and they were calling these 3 phone numbers, and none of them, like, they were calling every 3 minutes for 45 seconds. She's like, I then went to apartment 305 where Officer Weingartner, Tanego, and Sergeant Harris were located. And those are my 3 WTF motherfuckers. So we see her arrive on the clip of the body cam that we have. And she's the one that got Baker's number from Heidi. So she calls because Harris said that you're going to be our crisis negotiator. So when she goes then up to apartment 305, these are the 3 people that were in there. Weingartner, Tanego, and Harris. Every single person in this that did a report, only one person mentions that there was a civilian in 305 playing house with them. Being can you get me a water? Can you make me a sandwich? Nobody mentions that there was a freaking civilian in 305 in any of their reports. Now, Whitcomb told me, so while in the apartment, I asked Whitcomb to investigate Kopacka's local involvements and look for a possible emergency contact for him. Harris is right there. Whitcomb told me they found a friend of Kopacka's named Darren Duncan from a call where he reported Kopacka as a suicidal person on March 6th, 2022. Whitcomb provided a phone number. I contacted Darren over the phone. He answered. Darren told me he had not spoken to Kopacka in a month. I asked Darren about Kopacka's mental health. Darren said, he drinks a lot. Darren told me Kopacka lied to him a lot his whole life and did not know when Kopacka was telling the truth. I asked Darren if Kopacka had any mental health issues, and he said, probably, but he did not think he had been diagnosed by a doctor. Darren told me Kopacka was suicidal often and believed it was a cry out for help. Look at that. Former facility area manager at Amazon Fresh. Okay, so he said he lied to him a lot his whole life and did not know when he was telling the truth. I asked Darren if Kopacka had any mental health issues, and he said probably, but he did not think he had been diagnosed by a doctor. Darren told me that Kopacka was suicidal often and believed it was a cry for help. Darren told me something to the effect of Kopacka was in the 82nd Airborne of the U.S. Army. This is how they find out about this. That's what I was wondering. I said, how in the world did they find out about this before 9:30 p.m.? Because I got Baker saying he doesn't know anything about him except, I think he was in the Army or something. Same thing with Christian Yano. Like, nobody knows anything about this guy, right? But then here's Torino and the wife, and they're the ones that called. And then I looked into their background and who these people are. They help veterans. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they do on WSU's campus. So how in the world would you let a veteran, and then you're going to just fall over when you see what the guy posted a year after Kopacka's death? Darren told me that he was in a Humvee convoy when it hit an IED. The incident caused a back injury that required surgery. Darren said Brent was the only person to survive the incident. Kopacka was from Colorado and moved to Illinois when he was a teenager. Darren told me Brent did not have a good home life growing up, however, was unable to go into detail. Darren said he and Brent drank a lot together before Brent joined the Army. Darren told me that Brent had a drinking problem and had gotten several DUIs. Do you want to know what they do in Idaho and Washington when you are a notorious drinking and driving violator? They make you, when I had Courtney on with her son, that's what happened to him. He had a DUI, and they get you to do, yeah, that's it, informant. CI work. I want to give a shout out to Marsha. Thank you so much. Gifted 5 Truth and Transparency memberships. Woo woo Friday. Michelle gifted 5 memberships to the Transparency. Karen, $999.99. Move it. She's turning 20 people green as well in the chat. Mary Casey, $10 super sticker. William, $5 super sticker. WB super sticker. Woo-wee. Friday, baby. Cyber Ninja, new member. Yuri, let's do some math problems. Remember, for 8 months, gotta love it. $5 not for an Idaho potato. What's up, Hoppy Master? Good to see you in here. Thank you, thank you. Next. Darren told me that, I'm sorry. Darren said he did not think that Kopacka would shoot anyone and thought Kopacka was kind of a sissy. And he's definitely non-confrontational. So Darren's over here saying, wait, what are you talking about? This is not, I mean, he keeps on going. He's like, he said, Darren said if Kopacka had a gun, if he had a gun, it probably wouldn't even be loaded and would only be there for shock value. Okay. He said that Brent would never hurt anyone and was a good person. I believe Darren 100. I think it's being pretty raw. Like, so here in the middle of all of this, like when I say the middle of it, I'm talking about in the beginning of it. This officer, the female, is the second female, she calls him. Darren said he had to stop letting Brent stay with him because of his drinking problem. Brent said Kopacka probably had a gun. I relayed the information I learned from Jordan and Darren to Sergeant Harris. Another person, another female saying this was relayed to Harris. Because when the report came out on how this all played out, Harris in his report never once mentions that he learned that Brent was, a veteran, suffered from PTSD and all this stuff. And he learned it over and over and over. She said, I left apartment 305. Because that's where she was when she was getting all of this. She was in that room on the phone talking to Darren. And remember when she goes up there, Harris, Tenego, and Weingartner. I left apartment 305 and responded to the command post that was in the laundry room. Sergeant Harris said I could begin making phone calls to Kopacka's phone. I had 3 phone numbers that possibly were his. I called all 3 numbers with no answer. I texted each number and did not receive a text or a phone call back. I then began calling the number provided to me by Baker. I called Brent's phone number approximately 30 times before being advised his phone was unable to receive calls. And she was advised this not because he said it. That's what she was advised via the radio. The negotiator team then decided to move closer to Kopacka's location so we could utilize the throw phone. In an attempt to get Kopacka on the phone, our negotiator team set up the next, which was next to the south stairwell on the second floor. So the north stairwell and then the south. And the south one's actually further than the north. I was unable to hear exactly what Kopacka was saying. However, I could hear him screaming and violently throwing items inside of his apartment. There were several people on the second floor that came out of their apartments and asked if they were safe. So she's located on the second floor, underneath. I overheard the radio that chemical agents had been deployed. Okay, so there was, because it was dead silent, and then when it became not dead silent anymore was after they started putting in the tear gas. Okay. I believe that I tried 70 times to call him. You could see the negotiator log. And Brent did not answer the phone once during the entirety of all of the calls. That's how I got clarification on that. And her name was Kayla. Now, going back to this. Well, so this is the red car right there. That's what they roll up in. Worked at Washington State University Veterans Affairs. Former Hooker CH-47 Mechanics, United States Army. Studied aviation maintenance management at Central Washington University. Then I went further in my, I said, okay, what else do I got? Okay, look at how eerie this is. Do you guys remember the Brian Kober picture? Okay. Taylor Johnson. You guys remember that? Look at those eyebrows. Anyways, he is oh, this is the MackStrong. When I saw that, MackStrong is the I believe it's a nonprofit. They had it listed. Very similar post there that Brian had. And he is, in the Army, he knows these the Torino guy. And then I was like, well, what else? Okay. Then when I saw that Torino is friends with none other than friggin' WSU, Joe Kirshner, police officer, and I did it like this so you could see that I got that from being on Torino's friends list. Taylor Johnson studied criminology at WSU. All these criminology students. Good old friends with Torino. That's the guy, if we're just going to be talking about what people do. Army people, knives. Well, then there's more. Let's see. Oh, okay. Okay. Then I looked into, you guys know what the number one rental vehicle there is when you guys go get cars from rental services? They just love those white Honda Elantras. They just rent the shit out of those. You guys know that? Well, our boy Torino is notorious for renting vehicles from Enterprise, and he also leaves reviews. So he did this one in 2019. Yep, go ahead and give them a call. Ask them about it. It's true. It's a true statement. Next up, let's see. What's this one? Okay. Literally almost a year to the date. So basically, Torino wipes his social media for the year of 2022 after Kopacka's death. Doesn't say anything on it, doesn't make a mention of it. But here, as you can see, a year almost, December 16, 2023. Solid advice if you have a combat veteran in your family and you don't like their moods and behavior around the holidays, please consider these 6 things. And it was one of those things like copy, cut, and paste, all right, from like your friends or whatever. Well, nowhere on here does it say to like call the police and not tell the police that the guy that you called on has PTSD and he's in the military and that you clearly knew who Brent was. Okay. There's no way that you want me to believe that the guy here, Torino Deguzman, did not know who Brent was and his wife and what they do for a living. But his Facebook page is missing anything from after May 23rd, 2022. It's all wiped until 2023 happens. Let's see. Okay, so he says that he's helping a student, by the way. I'm going to make sure everybody sees this. So May 9th, Washington State University Veterans Center, May 9th. Then this is the survey for veterans who own homes. And he posted that on May 23rd. Then he suffers. He literally goes out to dinner in 2024 in January. Or I'm sorry, a month after he posts the December 16th to 2023 post about veterans in combat around the holidays, January 20th, he shares about going on Carnival cruises during the day on January 20th, then goes to dinner with friends and literally suffers a stroke at dinner and was horribly hospitalized and had to learn he lost a shit ton of weight and had to learn how to walk again and all this stuff. And that was a month after he posted about to the 1 year anniversary of Brent Kopacka. These are your 911 callers. They are all military people. And for whatever reason, I came across that these people were pastors Jordan Baker's a churchgoer. Christian Yana told the police his name was Gabriel. Okay. There's no furniture in this place. And And there was only a select few. Let's see. All right. So then I was like, I'm going to pull up Harris's report again. And this is what Harris tried to tell. So when Brashears was getting everything from Harris, he's the one that came out, and remember they had like the next day or 2 days later, they're like, this is what we're going to tell everybody. And they had like that video. So WSU was like, somebody called 911, but they weren't at the apartment. They were somewhere else. And it was just all a bunch of bullshit. Well, this was what he said. So you guys will remember it. A resident at 1000 Southeast Lates Hall Street, apartment 311, called 911 to report his roommate had threatened to shoot him and another roommate if they did not leave the apartment. Pullman officers responded to the scene and evacuated the 2 victim roommates from the area. While officers were on scene, the suspect ran into a room of the apartment, closed the door, and was refusing to come out. Brent Kopacka never closed any door. That was never reported in any report. This person, especially Heidi, the guy ran into they said, oh, he ran into C, and she never saw him. But the door was open to C. And that's when they were like, back up, get out, get out. He closed the door and was refusing to come out. Officers had unconfirmed information that the suspect had military training and was suffering from PTSD. Unconfirmed military training and was suffering from PTSD. Based on the various risk factors and safety concerns presented by uncooperative, armed, barricaded subject with potential military training that had already threatened multiple individuals, Sergeant Harris had activated the Whitman County's regional SWAT team. While the SWAT team was preparing to assist, patrol officers were maintaining a containment perimeter around the apartments. After speaking to Sergeant Harris, I texted Chief, who just booted, Peg North. I don't know if that's how you say it, but to advise him that the SWAT team was responding. I then drove to Pullman police station. This is Brashears. I phoned the chief again and briefed him on what I had known again on the incident, and then drove to the scene. I arrived in the area of approximately 9:56 p.m. Sergeant Engel, a SWAT team negotiator, and the other negotiator set up their communications equipment in a laundry room. Sergeant Harris, who assumed his role as team commander for the SWAT called out, provided another briefing at the scene. At that time, a mix of officers from the SWAT team, Pullman Police Department, and WSU Police Department were providing containment around the building. The apartment's unit 311 had been evacuated, and officers were positioned inside the north stairwell of the building and in an apartment close to unit 311. That's not even accurate, you guys. The apartments around unit 311 had been evacuated. What the fuck is he talking about? He knows that that's not true, and he knows that there is a civilian in room 305. Sergeant Harris advised that Officer Lamley was writing a search warrant seeking court approval to enter Unit 311. They didn't have a search warrant when they went in to get Christian Yenna. They punched in the code and they went right in. Baker gave them access. Why do you need a search warrant? Anyways, they end up getting the search warrant, you guys. They get the search warrant at 11:08. It was signed by the judge. I have it. So at 11:08 a.m. or p.m., like, there's been no noise from Brent. Why didn't they just go in? One of the roommates had immediately fled the apartment in fear while the other roommate locked himself in the room. Do you want to know why Bashir says that? Because Bashir's got his information from Harris. And Harris is wrong. And Harris is just making shit up. Harris arrives on that scene, the first person to arrive on that scene that day. And then Heidi and Weingartner, because they were at a different call before that. And so then when they heard about that, then those two went to then this scene. According to Sergeant Harris, Kopacka's roommates said he had been acting strangely and walked into the common area of the apartment armed with a handgun, brandished it at them, and told them he was going to shoot them in the next 5 minutes. One of the roommates had immediately fled the apartment in fear. Jordan Baker tells, this is where Jordan Baker's inconsistent. Jordan Baker tells Heidi that no, he ran into his room and locked the door and then waited until he didn't hear or see his shadow to then leave quietly. It's all lies. This is all lies. Pullman officers had responded to the scene and made entry into Unit 311 to rescue the remaining roommate. The officers reported that when they entered the apartment, the suspect retreated into a bedroom and locked the door. That's everything opposite of what everybody has said. This is the guy that's the commander of this, that Harris had to get everything okay through, was Brashears. They were able to escort the remaining roommate to safety and kept the apartment contained since that time. Based on the circumstances, Sergeant Harris recommended a surround and call out using the negotiators. I approved the plan. That's when I realized that who's calling the shots? Well, we'll see. And also what's being told, to homie. From the command post, Sergeant Cooper and I monitored all radio frequencies, and the command post was at Sun Rental. I communicated with the chief of police via my department cell phone. So I just went ahead and FOIA'd that. Thank you for putting that in your report. Now that's able to get FOIA'd. I want to know every call and what time. At about 10:53, he came out into the hall, meaning Kopacka, at 10:53 a.m. or p.m. He's saying that Kopacka came out into the hall. That never happened. Kopacka came out into the hall and spoke with SWAT officers. Again, I wrote inconsistent statement. Reportedly, he did not have a cell phone with service. They asked him to call 911 for emergency call to have it patched through the negotiators. Kopacka was advised he was under arrest at some point. Reportedly, he said, so let me ask you a question. If Kopacka really came to the door and opened the door and all that stuff, why wouldn't you take him? Reportedly, he said he would not surrender. Phone contact was not made with Kopacka at any time. At some point, Officer Lamley contacted me at the command post and provided me copies of search warrant. This is the number. The warrant, so I got that. The warrant was signed and approved by Whitman County District Court Judge John Hart. John Hart. You know who's friends with John Hart? You're gonna shit. Torino. Woo, Lana, you're so good. The warrant was signed and approved by Whitman County District Court Judge John Hart, finding probable cause for domestic violence felony harassment, and that was search warrant 1214222A. The search warrant authorized officers to enter and search apartment 311 for 1, a white male named Brent, 2, any and all firearms and ammunition, 3, indica of occupancy. So why didn't you go in? You had a search warrant and you got, and it was obtained, because then I went and crossed over with Megan or Heidi's report, and yep, she obtained it at 11:08. Then she called and double checked to make sure that she didn't have to have 311 and the A, B, or C on there. And it was all set to go. Based on reports from officers. So based on reports from officers, if he was listening to what we were listening to, right, he would be able to hear everything over the radios. But he has to say, based on reports from officers, I understood the apartment had a common area and individual bedrooms with letters attached to each room. You ready? I asked Officer Lamley to make sure Judge Hart was aware of that. They then tried to stall this. And I was like, I want to know why Heidi, because I was seeing the report and I was like, she's like, I called back to make sure that we didn't have to have this and blah, blah. I'm thinking, well, who advised her to do that? Because, I just didn't believe that she caught that on her own or that she was even thinking that. Especially, she got the search warrant the way that it was. So it was Brashears that said, hey, you know what? I think that you need to confirm that the warrant did not need to be specific and particular, that we have to put 311 A, B, or C. So what does she do? She has to call these people back, the judge. And so the warrant that they would have had at 11:08 then technically didn't get approved until 11:36. And guess what the judge said? The judge said, no, it's fine as it is. Negotiators requested, so she later advised me she had contacted Judge Hart and no change to the warrant was required. So who's stalling here to get this? Okay. Negotiators requested they move closer to the apartment in hopes of communicating with the subject via a throw phone. Now, I approved the request and asked SWAT to escort the negotiators to the proper location. And that was at about 11:19. Negotiators moved to a location one floor below the apartment. That's where the other chick is, who was doing all the phone calls. And so I was double checking all of that. And nowhere in any of her report, if you read Nuxall's report, because she's down on in 211. It's wild. Okay, so Sergeant Harris recommended opening the door to the apartment, hoping to provide officers a better view of the interior and allow easier communication with the suspect. I approved the plan, and SWAT opened the unlocked door. Negotiators continued calling the throw phone, but Kopacka did not come out, and officers reported there was no movement or response at that time. Throughout the incident, officers continued to evacuate other residents of the building as officers became aware of them. SWAT attempted to deploy drones to see into the apartment, but were unsuccessful. I later learned there were connectivity issues due to some kind of RF interference. SWAT used a pole camera to view partially into the apartment, but advised they could only see part of the apartment. Remember when they did that? None of that recorded on the body cam. At some point, negotiators attempted to contact Kopacka from the hallway outside the subject's apartment and from a nearby unit, which is 305, but he's not wanting to talk anything about 305. During those attempts, they clearly told Kopacka he was under arrest and warned him that force could be used if he did not surrender. Officers advised that Kopacka did not respond to the negotiators. Nobody heard from him the whole time that when they went up there and began everything at 9 o'clock. Now, as the incident continued with no response from Brent, Harris recommended that we should just start deploying and throwing in fucking tear gas. Based on my training and experience, I know that the use of OC, particularly in an enclosed space, will often cause a suspect to surrender without the need for any other force. For somebody that has PTSD, and they knew that. I also know that while the effects of OC can be extremely uncomfortable, they are generally of short duration and easy to treat, which makes OC a preferable alternative to other more direct physical force that can often cause injury to both the suspect and officers. If Brent was trying to shoot and kill people and do whatever, don't you think when somebody just came into his apartment like they did, which the body cam that we showed you, and that took place, don't you think Brent would be shooting them right then and there? And it would have been a shootout? The answer is yes, okay? So then think about this. Is that in fact exactly what happened, but it only happened earlier? Because every single person reported gunshots at 8:30 or 8:45 p.m. Based on these and other factors, I approve Sergeant Harris's plan to deploy OC through an exterior window. At about 1:45 a.m., officers used less lethal launcher to deploy into the bedroom where Kopacka was located via an exterior window. So they launched this shit from outside in. Shortly after deploying the OC, officers reported they could hear Kopacka coughing. Remember when we listened to it? And I was like, who's coughing? You know? Within a few minutes, officers reported that Kopacka peeked out of the bedroom he had been in, then ran into a nearby bathroom. SWAT officers and negotiators, nobody, though, in the reports that I've read that are actually the SWAT people, ever said that Kopacka went to the bathroom. SWAT officers and negotiators on the scene continued to give Kopacka commands and warnings that additional force may be used, but Kopacka continued to simply ignore them. Shortly after deploying OC into the bedroom through the window, SWAT officers also deployed OC directly into the main living area, and that came from the guys in 305. Again, hoping to force Kopacka to surrender without the need for additional force. I was concerned the OC may interfere with or activate the building's fire alarm and or sprinklers. So before any of this happened, I contacted PFD Pullman Fire Department Chief Hudson and obtained a key to the building's fire system. Officers then used the key to deactivate the system during the incident. They deactivated the sprinkler systems for fire. Now, is that even true? I'm going to attempt to get Police Department Chief Hudson and see if he had to fill out a report for doing this. Don't you think that'd be really, really dangerous? And I said, officers then use the key. I said, what officers? I haven't read a single fucking report yet that has said that I came there and deactivated the sprinklers. I said, who? What officers? So I just make my little notes. So when I throw in my foyers, it's like just 1, 2, 3. And I say, you can find why I'm asking for this in Officer Brashear's report mentions that all of this stuff happened. At around 2:08 hours, Officer Westerman advised it sounded like Kopacka was moving furniture around, possibly to further barricade himself in. And I was wondering why he was saying Westerman. Okay. So I'm going to come back to that. Negotiations continued. They couldn't get in contact with him. Several officers reported hearing Kopacka talking to himself, but he did not respond directly to the negotiators or other officers. At around 2:14, Officer Willis advised via radio that he could hear what sounded like Kopacka racking a slide to a firearm. Where and how did Willis hear that? Shortly after that, Sergeant Harris reported hearing a gunshot coming from inside the apartment. Well, civilians said that the police fired first. Racking a gun. Shortly after that, Sergeant Harris reported hearing a gunshot coming from the inside apartment. Officers at the scene reported no apparent injuries, and it was unclear what Kopacka may have been firing at. Within a few minutes, Sergeant Harris reported hearing another gunshot. You are on scene. Brashears is there. He has to write that these people are reporting that. That means because he's not hearing it. You understand? Sergeant Harris then reported that Kopacka was throwing things out of the window. What was he throwing out of the window? Wouldn't that have been on the ground then? So in my report, I said, I want pictures of the crime scene text and what they found outside on the ground that Kopacka threw out. Officer Willis reported hearing Kopacka say something about being willing to wait a day and a half before we, the police, came and got him. Sergeant Gordon asked if Sergeant Harris could communicate with Kopacka from the outside. Gordon is the lead, one of the lead SWAT people in 305. Sergeant Harris advised that Kopacka was currently talking to himself. Sergeant Harris indicated that he talked to Kopacka briefly before the second gunshot. Sergeant Harris indicated that he talked to Kopacka briefly before the second gunshot. Lies. You are a fucking liar. At about 2:30, I advised Chief of the status. What's the status? All these people are still in their fucking apartments, and Sergeant Harris reported hearing Kopacka used something like a curtain rod to break out the rest of the window, and that Kopacka was again throwing things. Do you understand that there's people outside? So then when I went and looked at the witness statements, at about 2:43 a.m., I could see at least one male standing in a window at the Stevenson complex across the way, which is located across Main Street from Kopacka's apartment. The male was yelling out the window in the direction of Kopacka's apartment. Do you know how far that is away? He could hear somebody yelling in like fucking way across the what? But you couldn't hear fucking shots? Absolutely bullshit. But he needs to put this in there for a reason, because guess why? He then needed to say, hey, I asked Whitcomb to advise WSU PD of the danger posed to the man yelling out the window so that they could address the issue. So then I went and looked and saw who they pulled at that time at 2:50 to go run a little errand, to go do something, because you're pulling people away from something. And sure as shit, they pulled away this guy that was right and keeping an eye on where the snipers were located. Okay. That's what that call was, because he was the WSU guy that was chilling. At about 2:45, Sergeant Harris advised he thought he heard another gunshot coming from Kopacka's apartment. Now, Officer Weingartner reported hearing the shot as well. Those are the only two people that are reporting this shit. And then they get these other people to jump in. But again, who are my people that I'm? Harris, Weingartner. Within just a couple minutes, Sergeant Harris reported hearing another shot, and Officer Weingartner reported that it sounded like the round had exited the apartment through a window. At that time, I could now clearly hear the gunshots coming from the apartment while at my position at the command post. At about 2:50, Sergeant Harris reported hearing another shot. At the same time, Sergeant Gordon advised that nothing had changed from the interior SWAT position. So Harris is saying one thing, and Gordon's over here like nothing has changed from like our area. At about 2:57, I requested Whitcomb call Spokane PD and have them contact me. From my training and experience, I knew that officers would start to experience fatigue and decreased performance over time from such an intense and stressful experience. This would put the officers at a greater risk of injury or death. There was no indication that the subject was going to surrender anytime soon. And it was my responsibility to ensure There were adequate resources to safely address the threat to the community. So at 3 a.m., Sergeant Harris deployed another lethal, or not lethal, but less lethal, tear gas. Over the next 20 to 30 minutes at 3 o'clock, multiple officers reported hearing repeated shots coming from the apartment. None of that shit started happening until after the tear gassing. Mind you, the gunshots. And again, this guy is saying multiple officers reported hearing repeated shots coming from the apartment. He doesn't say, Brashears isn't saying, I heard them. Multiple officers are reporting this. And I'm like, why are you writing multiple officers? It's the same people. It's the same people. And Sergeant Gordon advised that Kopacka had briefly moved into view of SWAT officers near the apartment. And Kopacka was clearly holding a handgun. This is what Brashears writes in his report. It is completely not what is in Gordon's report. Given the length of this incident and the fact that the officers had still not established any consistent communication with Kopacka, they didn't establish any communication. That'd be a gun. Now, at about 3:21, now this is where Officer Romero wants to just start chirping in, and he's saying Kopacka threatened to murder. I'm going to murder you. Where is Officer Romero even stationed? Which he interpreted as a threat. Officer Romero said, he just said he was going to murder me. And around the same time, Sergeant Harris reported that Kopacka had fired another shot at the window. And I asked Sergeant Harris if we knew what Kopacka was shooting at. Sergeant Harris indicated it was unclear what Kopacka was shooting at, as Kopacka was staying low and largely out of sight of officers. How do you know that he's staying low? Well, because we can't see him. Given Kopacka's position, where's his position if you can't see him? He appeared to be shooting generally at an upward trajectory from his third floor position. The shots would be going towards the state highway route 270. At one point, Officer Ramiro reported hearing 3 shots from Kopacka. Sergeant Harris reported a bullet had struck the vehicle he and Ramiro were in. They were in the armored truck. And the Kopacka appeared to now be intentionally targeting and shooting at police officers. So then I was like, you know what? I want to see what this Ramiro dude wrote. And when I got to his, I was like, oh my God. Officer Ramiro. This is him. At approximately 11:52 hours, I responded to the SWAT call so he doesn't get there till 11:52. I was directed to the north exterior stairwell of South Lake Hall Street by Sergeant Harris. I was on the floor level of the apartment complex at approximately 1:44. Sergeant Harris deployed. So when he gets there, that's when the tear gas is going to start flying. Okay. I activated my body camera at approximately 2:07. During this activation of my camera, I could hear Kopacka moving things around inside of the apartment. Kopacka was breaking windows and throwing items out the windows into the parking lot and hitting vehicles with the items. I was tasked with being part of the arresting team if Kopacka exited the apartment from the balcony/windows. They think that he is going to jump from the balcony. Listen to this. I reactivated my body-worn camera at approximately 2:14 hours after Kopacka fired a round. I could hear what sounded like the slide of a pistol being racked. So I reactivated my body-worn camera at approximately 2:14. That's right after they say the first gunshot. And he said, I could hear what sounded like the slide of a pistol being racked. From the first floor, he could hear the racking of Kopacka and began breaking more windows and throwing things into the parking lot onto the vehicles below balcony of 311. I heard Kopacka say, "Anybody in the 300 level, get out of here." I heard Kopacka say, "Anybody in the 300 level, get out of here." You think that that's what he was saying? As I was relaying what Kopacka had said, one of the SWAT team members included that Kopacka also said, "I will kill you." So now Ramiro is saying that "I will kill you" is from somebody else. Remember? But Brashears is saying that Ramiro. Kopacka continued talking to himself and making loud banging sounds inside the apartment. I felt like Kopacka was breaking the windows in preparation to exit the apartment by jumping from the balcony. What are you talking about? The window got broken because y'all are throwing shit to tear gas him. I also felt like Kopacka may have been breaking the windows to allow him to have a better shot at people or officers outside of the apartment. I heard Kopacka say, in quotes, "And fucking kill yourself. I fucking can't stand you," end quote. I immediately after hearing Kopacka make the previous statement, he fired another round and said, "Oh God, I killed an angel." A short period of time after this, an individual was walking down the stairwell from E Main Street to the northeast parking lot. Kopacka's balcony and windows overlooked the same parking lot and stairwell. Officer Banks yelled for the individual to turn around and the individual went back up the stairs. I heard Kopacka say, "Little bitch ass N-word," in quotes. Immediately after Kopacka fired one round, Kopacka fired another round approximately 2 minutes later. Officer Weingartner asked if Kopacka had fired 5 or 6 rounds. I told Officer Weingartner that I believe there had been 5 rounds fired at that time. So I think that was over the radio because I was trying to see if, because where Weingartner should be is where this kid should be. At approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, Sergeant Harris advised the deployment of more, tear gas. Immediately after the deployment of tear gas, Kopacka fired 3 more rounds. At approximately 3:08 hours, I heard an unknown unit on the radio state Kopacka had a black handgun in his hand. At 3:08, and they say an unknown unit said this. They're just all blaming each other. Then, throughout the incident, I heard Kopacka mention cigarettes multiple times. Kopacka also made statements including the horrible language, racial slurs. I'm not entertaining this. At approximately 3:08 hours, Kopacka fired another round. At approximately 3:18, Kopacka fired another round. At approximately 3:21, Kopacka said, "I'll fucking kill you right now. I'll fucking murder you," and shot another round. At approximately 3:23 hours, Kopacka fired another shot. At approximately 3:24 hours, Kopacka fired 3 more rounds. At approximately 3:25 hours, Kopacka fired 2 more rounds and said, "I'm going to F you up. Is he dead?" Sergeant Harris advised that Kopacka had shot at the armored vehicle Sergeant Harris was in the parking lot. Boom. Brashears said that Ramiro was with Harris in the vehicle. Right here, now, here's Ramiro. Ramiro said Sergeant Harris advised that Kopacka had shot at the armored vehicle Sergeant Harris was in the parking lot. Proof of lies. I heard Kopacka yell, "Give me my fucking cigarettes, you dumb fucking." At approximately, this is, oh God, I'm at approximately, why? I'm shooting high because I don't want to hit you. Kopacka fired again and saying, "Fuck 12 and fucking pigs." Kopacka was making anti-police statements such as "fuck 12 and fuck pigs" at approximately 3:38 hours. Kopacka fired another round and said, "Did I get him?" Glass fell from above than Kopacka fired than previous rounds. And perhaps says, yeah, I'm burning down in about 45 seconds. Tell that N-word at the front door he better back up because I'm going to F him up. At approximately 3:41 hours, a unit radioed there was a muzzle out of the window. Kopacka fired another round. See, a unit radioed there was a muzzle out of the window. Who's that? Easy British liars. 3:14, 3:41. At approximately 3:40 hours, I heard this was a louder than previous ones. I heard SWAT confirm on the radio that they had shot at Kopacka. Shortly after SWAT shot at him, I heard another round fire that sounded similar to the rounds Kopacka had been firing. I heard Kopacka say something along the lines of, went right through me. I heard what sounded like the sliding of a pistol racking. Kopacka fired another round after making the previous statement. At approximately 3:41, Kopacka fired another round. One of the SWAT members radioed that their shot was ineffective. At approximately 3:43, Kopacka fired 2 more rounds. At approximately 3:44, a unit radioed that there appeared to be a fire. So now a unit radioed. He's not announcing what unit it is. It was Harris. Harris did it. Harris and Weingartner were the ones that said that he started a fucking fire. Harris and Weingartner. And here's Romero saying he refuses to say who said it because it didn't happen. A unit radio that there had been, find out everything you can about Romero and how he sucks off Harris. Started in Kopacka's residence. Kopacka fired 2 more rounds. Same thing with Weingartner. They're all sucking each other off. At approximately 3:45 hours, Harris told Officer Banks and I to begin evacuating the building. Officer Banks, Officer Westerman, and I began evacuating the first floor of the building. As Officer Banks and Officer Westerman were evacuating the residence, I was holding lethal cover of the doorway leading out to the north stairwell and parking lot. I thought there was a strong possibility Kopacka would jump from the balcony and try to injure or kill anyone in proximity or escape. At approximately 3:56 a.m., I radioed that the first floor was clear. I went back out into the north stairwell. At approximately 3:58 hours, I heard what sounded. Ready? At approximately 3:58 hours, I heard what sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. What does that sound like to you? I heard what sounded like the sliding of a pistol being racked. I heard a round fired that sounded like a larger caliber than the caliber Kopacka had been firing. A unit radioed that the sniper had fired and the suspect was down. At approximately 4:14 hours, Officer Andre radioed that the suspect was down. At approximately 4:18 hours, Officer Banks and I went to the 3rd floor of the building and provided scene security after the SWAT team exited. At approximately 4:34 hours, Officer Nuxall, that's the girl, Sergeant Harris, and I taped off the scene. Officer Banks began a crime scene log. At approximately 4:44 hours, we located a bullet hole in the hallway, penetrating the northwest wall opposite of Kopacka's residence, and they just went in there and got it. How the fuck would there be a gunfire through and going through all these windows and bathroom, then the window to the bathroom, and then that wall to get all the way into the apartment that would be across the way from Brent's? Like, Well, thank you, Officer Romero. That was just, So going back to Bashir's and his bullshit. Oh, that goes like this. That goes like this. Okay. During the time that this guy had no body cam on, Patrita, he was given an award. It was his award was like Officer of the Year or some shit like that. Okay. He did not wear his body worn camera during this, and he was one of the SWAT members that was in 305. So he's up in 305, and he says, when I got up to 305, I began to yell into the apartment Brent was in. I yelled for Brent multiple times that we wanted to resolve the situation peacefully. I yelled to Brent multiple times that I want him to talk to me. I yelled to Brent multiple times for him to exit the area he was in with his hands up and empty. See camera footage from SWAT team members, not his. Negotiators continued to call into the residence, utilize the negotiator, throw a phone, blah, blah, blah. Brent did not answer. I was advised by SWAT to give Brent an advisement that the chemical agents may be used against him. I advised Brent multiple times. During the time that I was in apartment 305, I heard multiple gunshots coming from the apartment. I advised Brent multiple times to put down the firearms that he was using. I heard Brent yelling in his apartment. And so what I'm trying to gear up is, you guys know the stairwell is right next to the apartment, right? And I believe that the person that was yelling was coming from the stairwell. See this, during my time attempting to contact Brent, I heard an officer state on the radio that Brent had stated he was going to start killing people, started with the people outside. How could nobody hear this if you were in 305? If he was screaming this shit. Everything is coming from, I heard over the radio. And so I was narrowing down whose actual report was saying that they were personally the ones that heard this shit. And that is Harris, Weingardner, and Romero. I heard a deputy, this is who was with Brashears, advised via radio that it appeared Brent was possibly starting a fire in the apartment. Commander Brashears advised via the radio that the apartment complex needed to be evacuated. I heard a single gunshot, the sound of something hitting the floor, and deputy advising that the suspect was down. They used so what ended up making people shoot this man is, okay, he's starting a fire. Like, they kept trying to do things because and saying things, okay, when are we going to like say that we pulled off and did this shot? This is so gross. So I want to show you guys what I mean by that. So if you go back to and you look at some of the body cam, I have what's the case number? 225354747. Body cam. Hold on one second. I'm going to use this other one. All right, so I think I have a new body cam. Let's take a look. Okay, I got it. Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to do it like this. All right, here's the video. Okay, perfect. Hold on one second. I have to restart it. Boy. Come on.
Once you get this figured out. Brent, the The phone is going to ring. Answer it and we can talk about this.
Someone want to come switch out with me? Someone be on Willis's shoulder. Maybe right to that middle. Chris's shoulder. Willis's outside. Chris, he's not going. Stay on out the door.
Brent, come to the door with your hands up and empty.
Hey, Diego,
Yeah.
don't light that shit off right next to my ear.
Oh, nothing has to.
You better have the shot. There goes my hearing for the rest of my life.
Great.
You know where we want it.
Great.
Close to that door if possible, so if you can bounce it off that. It's a sound.
That's JRD.
Okay.
Bedroom door.
That's JRD.
All right, this is right before they say that there's this.
Brent, answer.
Oh, no, right here's some big. Oh, there we go. Let's see a look.
Sounds like he's barricading Ruben. Yep.
You can stab a hole in my can. Just in case.
Right there. There it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Hold on. Check this out. There's the white car.
Okay.
Next one, so not right there. See this white one right here coming up? There she is. That's one of those cars there that night in Moscow. It's not a long shot. It's one of the vehicles, though, that was there. Body cams. It's the hatchback Honda. It's the vehicle that I believe is seen on the, it could be the 345 one that they have in Moscow, but also the ones on the Banfield body cam. That is Christian, aka told him everybody that his name was Gabriel, black kid. And yeah, when you got people lying about who they are and all this shit, then people are buying them hotel rooms, and Kelly Farley's getting a hotel room, even though she's jumping and missing her court appearance on 12/6. But Pullman buys her a hotel room for back-to-back nights on 12/16 and 12/17.
Sounds like he's barricading Ruben. Yep.
Those people just have their backs to the let me just wow. Now the first shot that's fired is supposedly going to be after they do the tear gas. So this is where you're going to be listening, which is going to be right here between 2:12 and 2:15. This is the guy's room across the street, across the hallway. Okay, so right here, this dude is sitting in the 305 apartment that they took over across from 311. Okay, they're not in Brent's apartment. This is in 305.
Yeah, we're a little louder.
Brent, come out with your hands up and empty.
Yeah.
We want to get this resolved as peacefully as possible.
Maybe don't beat the door down.
Come out with your hands up and empty.
Oh. We want to break down the door a little more for us. Maybe you guys could call the sheriff.
Good.
No!
Alright, let's do it.
Pop there, motherfuckers, fuck of it!
You recovered, go again.
Did you guys hear Brent coughing?
Well, he may shoot out that window, too. There's more shit
You want a shield? That's your hands up.
I could take a break when someone's ready.
Brent! Well, you ready? Brent, I hear you saying something, but I can't hear what it is. Answer the phone when it rings and we can talk.
Hear that? He wasn't saying anything.
That sounded like a gunshot. That sounded like...
Then we can talk.
Okay, did you just hear that? That's a gunshot and it's taken in the stairwell. If you guys don't hear that and you don't think that that's taken out of the stairwell, then I cannot help you. That is a gunshot from the stairwell. It echoes like it's coming out of the stairwell. Please listen to this again. You will hear the echo from the stairwell. This is a gunshot from the stairwell, which is right next to Brent's room, is the stairwell. So listen again. This is the first gunshot that they say of the whole entire night, okay? And it's coming from the stairwell like I fucking called it. And I put all of these little fuckers reports together. And this is totally from the stairwell. It's got the echo. Y'all can eat my motherfucking titties. Here you go. Ready? Here you go.
Phone when it rings and we can talk.
Stairwell.
That sounded like a gunshot.
All officers are up inside. All right, I want someone here. Here. Just, that's one. Someone just you be over there. That's one over here.
On your left shoulder.
Hopefully with a suppressor.
Coming down the hallway. Is Shane coming down the hallway?
Anyone in the 300 level, don't come down the hallway. Waiting shot.
No. That was a handgun.
Answer the phone and we can talk.
Right there. I think those are people yelling in the stairwell. Weingartner, Harris, Ramiro. That's what they were. Join me back here, but play it back, run it back. You can hear that echo. It's straight from the stairwell. It's crazy. It's crazy. Peace out. Thank you guys so much for your support. I just put in. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much. The best monthly money I have ever spent. Oh, thank you. That's actually a really good compliment. All right, you guys rock. Again, appreciate you. I will play this. I have it somewhere. So I have 6 or 7 body cams. After hearing and reading the reports, then you see this shit, and it's like all these people can go to hell. This is bullshit. All the inconsistencies and all these statements and all these reports, and how everybody was like, let me see the radio, let me see my body cam. I have to make my report for my body cam, and it's like, you know, why? Everybody's blaming everybody else. After hearing that Darren was contacted at about 9:30 and the report was written up and everything that he was saying about what type of, like, you know, my friend would never do that. You know, he wouldn't be shooting at people. He, you know, blah, blah, blah. They knew everything about this guy so early on. And then they thought to tear gas this type of a person. And it makes me sick that Jordan Baker and the Deguzmans, or whatever the fuck their names are, acting like they don't know who Brent is. You worked at WSU in the veterans section. You guys were all military people, and this is fucking sick. I think there's some money scam going on, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I promise you that. Peace out, Girl Scouts. Oh, and what's his name? That Torino guy? He worked at Amazon. Go dig. You know, all these guys have those K-bar knives and shit, right? Probably ordering off Amazon for their K-bars as well. Get fucked.